3, 2, 1. You ready?
Yeah. Why Rehab City? Rehab City is the place where we build people, we build leaders, we build families, and we build communities. But it started with me. I didn't get into this thing to have a platform. I didn't get into this thing to even have a ministry. Rehab started with my life. It started when I was sitting in my bedroom and I heard the Lord clear as day tell me, I need you to rehab your life. And at the time, I didn't know exactly what that meant. But during that time, I was an interior designer. I flipped homes, and it just made sense to me to look at my life the way that you would remodel a home. So that's what I did. I looked at the fact that when you remodel a home, you start with blueprints. You move into checking out the space. Sometimes the spaces are dirty, they're filthy, they're full of trash. You have to be able to look at it and see if it has good bones, good quality, to be able to be rebuilt. And that's how I saw me. I saw my life, and it was full of junk that I picked up throughout, my childhood, throughout my adolescence, throughout my adulthood, things that caused me to make decisions based off of preference. But I had no principle in my life. I built a life based off of what I wanted, and that got demolished with a huge wrecking ball by God because I got saved. To my defense, I had no idea that I was supposed to ask God about who I was, my identity, what I was called to be, what I was called to do. I did not know this. I wasn't kind of born into this thing. I knew of God, but I didn't know him personally. I didn't have an intimate relationship with him. But I got saved. I got filled. He found me. Thank you, Jesus. He found me. And in finding me, I began to realize that my entire life was built around things I thought I was supposed to know. It was built around things I thought I was supposed to do. It was built around things that people wanted me to do, how people wanted me to act, how people wanted me to move. I was such a people pleaser, and everything in my life showed it. Everything. I felt empty and I felt dissatisfied. And so when God started talking to me about rehab in my life, I understood I was filled with all of this junk, and I needed to look at myself, one, knowing that I had good bones. I had good bones. I was a good person. I had good qualities. I had great features. I mean, if you can't tell so myself, right? I had great features. But I knew that I needed work. I needed internal work. I knew that my connections sucked. I knew that my structure, I had no boundaries, no sense of boundaries. I knew that my foundation was done strictly on what I wanted and had nothing to do with the principles of the kingdom or even the laws of God, his word. It wasn't founded on anything solid. So that's what I began to do. I began to study. I began to look at his word. I began to understand how my life was truly supposed to be built by looking at the stories in the Bible, beginning to look at other people's testimonies and how he came in their lives and began to wreck their lives, but transform them into these amazing people. And then I realized that I understood the text, do not be conformed to the world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. I spent every day renewing my mind, but I spent every day also in the presence of God because I didn't want to just renew my mind just based off of information, but I needed that intimacy. To know him is to know me. So I needed to get close. I needed to get close with my creator. I needed to get close with my maker. And then he began to show me who I was and what I was called to do and what he sent me in the earth to do. And that put me on the journey of rehab. And I'm telling you, it has been a journey, which is the reason why I say rehabbing is not for punks. You got to be willing to get dirty. You got to be willing to see the truth about yourself because there is no real deliverance without truth. You got to be able to look yourself dead in the mirror and say, I got a problem with manipulation. I have a problem with lying. I have a problem with this or that. You have to be able to deal with the truth of who you've been and then allow God to tell you the truth about who you are. and allow him to transform you in such a way that you become an entirely new person. That's what rehabbing is about. It's about taking the principles of God and beginning to build that life strictly off of what he said, strictly off of his fundamentals, strictly off of his principles, strictly off of his laws. There's no opinions, nothing but truth. And that's what makes it solid. So it started with me. We took that wrecking ball and began to wreck my life. I went through a divorce because I began to realize that I married someone that God did not choose and I was unequally yoked with. We ain't got time to talk about that. I lost my house. I lost my cars. I lost every single thing in this journey. Everything in this journey. But I had refused to quit in the process because I understood that I needed to get rid of every single thing that did not match his blueprint, that did not match the architect of my life. He's the chief architect, and I needed to get rid of everything that he did not authorize in my life. So as that stuff began to fall off, as those labels began to fall off, I'm going to be honest with you. I had no idea who I was. None. I realized that I was a girl who defined her life based on the stuff she had, based on the stuff she did, based on how people perceived me. Oh, I was big on presentation, big on it. This is how I defined me. And then God started asking me questions like, if I took away your children, then who would you be? Would you solely define yourself as a mother? Now that you no longer have the marriage, who are you? Are you only a wife? These are assignments, and you can't define who you are based on assignments. They change. I began to understand more about my life and how I had been functioning. Oh, it was horrible. It was horrible because none of that was the core of who I was. It was just what I did. So he made me get rid of every single thing. And I mean everything, y'all. And he took me back to the very beginning. To my before. And we began to build that foundation. And after building foundation with him, he started building me up in structure. He started teaching me boundaries, how to have boundaries that matched my foundation. So for me to understand that I can't hang with you guys because that's not my fundamental principle. So I can't do that anymore. I can't live like that anymore. That's not my fundamental principle. Then it started teaching me in things of like connection, learning who to connect to, learning how to filter, learning how to move and flow and be structured. It began to teach me a whole new world of different things. And then it led me to here. Rehab my life moved from me to Destination Rehab. I'll never forget the day that Destination Rehab was birthed. My daughter Jo loves to set me up. At this time, I was not a traveling minister. At this time, my book was not released or anything like that. At this time, nobody really knew who I was. I was just using these principles on myself, changing my life, allowing myself to be transformed. And she comes to the house with a friend of hers, and we're sitting there, we're having discussion, and she sets me up before, but she really set her friend up. Before I know it, I'm prophesying to her and telling her some things about her, and then she instantly saying, "You should come to the school." And I'm thinking, me? So school? For what? And she began to say, "We need this where we are. Can you just come to the school and talk to us and begin to teach us?" And Destination Rehab was born. I went to the University of, I believe this, what's the name of this university? Texas A&M. We went there, and we were in a college apartment complex. We started in the clubhouse of that apartment complex. Oh, it was like a movie theater. It was cool, y'all. We had couches. We had everything. We were set up. We were so chill. We had food. We had everything. And there, I taught one of my first Bible study lessons. I had preached before, but I had never preached in front of people that I really didn't know. This was the first time I preached in front of people that I didn't know. And when I tell you, it was so authentic. Woo! It was so authentic, and it began to fuel something on the inside of me. For the first time, I began to see the girl that I saw in my head, the girl that I saw in my dreams, the girl that I saw in visions, the girl that I saw in my prayer time, the one that God would tell me about, the one that I was too afraid to even be. I finally started dipping my toe in this water and just started going with it. And the funniest thing in the world was these babies were so open. Oh, they were so open. They were so ready for the word of God. And it fueled me and it set me on blaze. And before I know it, Destination Rehab, we started having Bible studies, and then Bible studies turned into baptisms, and baptisms turned into having these mentor groups and these mentor sessions. And it just went from there. Destination Rehab shifted to Rehab Lab. And before I know it, I'm teaching people how to structure their lives and do exactly what I did. I mean, this thing just grew out of control. It really went far beyond what I thought. I was just a girl trying to fix her life. I was trying to fix my own life. I didn't know that in fixing mine, it was going to fix everybody else's. I didn't know that it was going to become its own blueprint. I had no idea the complexity of God's plan. Not even close. They turned into Rehab Lab. Rehab Lab turned into a Maid Academy. Maid Academy turned into monthly mentorships and personal mentorship one-on-ones. And I mean, this thing just grew out of control. And then I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. Rehab My Life is now moving on. I'm getting all this traction from social media. And I decided I'm going on this 31 days of fasting and prayer. And I'm bringing my whole platform with me. We're going to fast together. And I used to wake up every morning, y'all, at 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock a.m. Woo! 6 o'clock a.m. Y'all, we didn't have no fancy lights. We didn't have nothing. I used to sit on the edge of my bed every morning with this tripod and a phone. I think it was an iPhone 7 at the time. We would sit there and we would do these Facebook Lives, y'all. And it was crazy. Every morning, God would wake me up with a word and we would pray and I would press that word in. And I mean, we were set on fire. I started getting inboxes like, man, I never get up for prayer. But these 31 days of prayer and fasting is making me get up. It makes me want to pray. It makes me want to wait up. It's setting my day. And all that stuff helps. All that stuff helps. All that stuff helps. So I enjoy all y'all inboxes and all that stuff. It really helps. Those 31 days turned into, I believe, 60 days. God made us extended. He made us extended. All meanwhile, I am working my full-time job. And at the same time, I am now an itinerant preacher. I am now traveling and preaching and doing Facebook Zooms and all these different things that people are inviting me to. I mean, I'm talking about me, this girl here that felt like nobody wanted to hear what she had to say. This girl now is being plastered everywhere, and we're doing these 60 days of prayer fasting now. And on the very last day, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it led up to our MAID conference, or like a virtual conference. And we were doing like 5 days of it, and we did each portion. We did like a white portion, things like that, because at the time I was only mentoring women. And on the very last day, which was my day, I opened my mouth. I opened my mouth and I literally said, if you need a pastor, I want to be your pastor. Whew. Why did I say that? Still to this day, y'all, I'm very trippy about the fact that my prophetic self, who's so yielded to God, who is so in tune with Him, Literally on an auction, y'all. Speak this out of my mouth. Yeah, that still really trips me out every time I think about it. But we literally do this. At that time, I believe it was 20-something people that felt like they needed a pastor. And I was like, okay, wait, am I like a virtual pastor now? I'm like a Facebook pastor? Wait a minute, what is happening here? And so at that time, I began to tell myself, I'm not pastoring. That's not my call. I'm going to stick to itinerant preaching. I'm going to stick to being everybody's favorite prophet. And that's just what I'm going to do. Lord, I cannot be responsible for people's souls. If I'm not mistaken, I believe this was like around July of, 2020, maybe 2021. And then moving on, I started having shift nights, which was these prayer power nights where we would come in and we would just worship and just be before God. And I had the first one in person. And I told y'all, I love being a prophet because, when I prophesy and give you a prophecy, that's your problem. It's not mine. So I'm not responsible for it. But when I become a pastor, you are responsible for the sheep's soul. And I was sitting there like, okay, we're at our session, and I begin to get up, and I'm saying, obey God, obey God, obey God. And I'm yelling it at the people. And then I heard God say, you obey me. And I was like, Father, what you talking about? I instantly got so much conviction because I knew that for the last 8 months or so, I have been running from what I knew God was calling me to do. Let me be honest with you. I know that I got a pastoral grace on me, okay? I was ordained a pastor in 2016 as a campus pastor. But once I left that ministry, I was like, there's no way I'm going to be somebody's senior pastor. It's just not it. It's just not it. But for 8 months, I was running. For 8 months, I was dodging that call. So then as a prophet, I'm up here, obey God, obey God. And then God said, obey me. You obey me. Then they'll obey me. I instantly give the mic away. And I get on that altar. And I'm prostrate on the altar too, y'all. And I'm asking God to forgive me for not doing what he told me to do. For not being everything he told me to be. For partially accepting assignments. Getting the parts that I wanted, but not the parts that I did. I had to begin to tell him, God, it's all or nothing. It's all or nothing. I'm committed to this thing. I'm committed to you. And I got off that floor. I grabbed the mic. And I stood on that platform. And I confessed that Rehab City was going to be the new church located in Houston, Texas. It felt like a glass ceiling shattered over me. It felt like the walls in the room broke out. And before I knew it, like people were wilding, people were running around, screaming, shouting. It was so crazy. And then I heard God say, welcome them to you. I asked them to connect to you. And I extended that invitation and told them, come shake my hand. Ooh. And y'all, Rehab City was born. That day, they came and they shook my hand. We had people from out of town. They came and shook my hand. It was one of the craziest experiences of my life. And from there on, I became a builder of people. And from a builder of people to a builder of leaders. And from there, we took these lessons and moved them into our families. And with us becoming family, we built a community of believers that in here we come in and get equipped to become, so we can go out and affect the world. Here, I'm not teaching you to be great in the four walls. I'm not teaching you how to use your gifts just for the church. Here, we teach you how to go and use all the gifts that God has given you. Go out into that world and use it to be walking, living testimonies of His goodness, of His mercy, and of His power. I believe that ultimately this is what we're called to do. We are the real influencers. We are the real influencers. Here, we demo to build up. We break to build. And when we build, we go and affect everything around us. Is that not what houses do? Houses allow you to come and take a part of them. They become a part of you. They become homes, not just edifices. They become collectors of beautiful pieces that people get to appreciate, that gets to make people's lives comfortable. They become places where people get to plug into them and receive some type of source or transfer from. There are places that you get to cook meals and get substance from. Eat and be full. Places where people can commune, connect, feel a part of. You are that home. You are that home. And God wants you to be the fullness of the vessel that He created you to be. This is Rehab City. We build people into leaders. Leaders who go and build families and affect their families. And then go out and affect the community. Why Rehab City? We're builders. And this is the era of the builders.